Welcome to this live edition of Seahawks Forever, an episode we like to call Ask Coach Bryce. Bryce Cooch, you may know him as host of the Hawks Eye podcast. He is also a quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, runs a quarterback academy, and we love talking X's and O's with him. And we've got some of your questions that you have submitted ahead of time, and then also because this is live, we'll take your questions live on the air tonight as well. Bryce is going to be joining me on the other side. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Let's get Bryce in here. Shout out to the guys down below at Fast Fashion Brewing. I know baseball season's over. Don't want to talk about that tonight, but Seahawks will be back home in a few weeks. Or if you're a Sounder fan and you just want an excuse to drink some good beer, head on down to Soto and give those guys a try there on First Avenue, right across the street from Showbox. Soto. Bryce, how you doing?
Good, Dan. How are you?
I'm good. So do you like bye weeks or do they drive you crazy?
As a fan, bye weeks always drive me crazy because it's like I'm not going to get to watch my team. But as a coach, I absolutely love bye weeks. Bye weeks are one of my favorite things for self-scouting, game planning, even giving you a chance to start looking even ahead past your next opponent so you can kind of get an idea of where you might be having to install some things. So as a coach, absolutely love them. As a fan, can't stand them.
I have come to enjoy them. I think part of it is the season's longer now, but it's just such a grind. And especially now doing this, it's kind of nice to just take a breath and watch the rest of the league. Like, there's so many times, I'm a big red zone guy. There's so many times that the Seahawks are playing in the same window as some other really compelling games. And so it's nice to just be able to sit back without any stress and just watch the rest of the league. You mentioned self-scouting. I think we're going to get into a lot of the concepts related to that idea with some of these questions today. But just kind of, obviously the title's a little bit self-explanatory, but just kind of explain to people that maybe have never heard that term before exactly what's happening right now during this week where the players are off, but the coaches are still doing some work behind the scenes, kind of looking in the mirror, right?
Yeah, so basically during this, time for coaches, what you do is you usually spend, at least for me and where I've been involved in coaching at the collegiate level and high school, is we kind of go back and we look at our first, couple games that we've played up until that bye week. We look at, what have we done really well? What have we been okay at? And what have we really struggled with? Is it schemes that we're going up against we're struggling? Is it stuff within our own scheme that we can't seem to execute properly? And you basically kind of go through a list, and then throughout that week and a half off, because basically for them, this whole week the Seahawks have been using, for the coaches, it's all self-evaluation. They're probably even going back to stuff that they were looking at in training camp in some respects on guys that, maybe they need to give a better look at when it comes to this week of practice. They will look at, hey, we installed these 15 plays in training camp, and we haven't called one of them yet. Are we ever going to call them? Do we need them, or can we scrap them? Do we need to bring something else in? Those are kind of the things you go through during this self-evaluation process and self-scouting process. And then as this weekend ends, so probably late Sunday or Monday morning, they'll start their game prep for the Washington Commanders.
I would imagine a good portion of the time they spend this week determining what they're going to do is how to incorporate everyone on defense, because it looks like at this point that for the first time all season long that they'll be able to run that defense out, at least notwithstanding the first 4 snaps. Well, not even then. I was going to say the first 4 snaps of the year before Eamon Warren got hurt, but Nwosu wasn't here yet. So this truly will be the first opportunity for them to get all 11 to 15, 16 guys on the field that they want to and be at their best against the Commanders. All right. So we've got some questions preloaded that I've collected on YouTube and Twitter and elsewhere. And some of these are from a week ago when we had to cancel at the last minute. Sorry about that. That's never going to have to happen again. And so a lot of them still apply. So I'm going to go through some of those, and then we'll take your live questions on air, which we're already starting to pile up in the comments. And the first, I'm going to cycle through these first few because, to no surprise, and it's the reason that the thumbnail and the title of this episode is what it is, the first batch of questions that came in were all related to the run game. Hank Murbaugh Why is our run game so rocky? Based Jim Enjoyer, is the lagging run game more due to play calling or player execution of the plays? And then I'd rather be flying. If you were in charge of the run game, what would you change? We saw some signs on Monday night, 4 yards per carry, right? 112 yards rushing against a team that was top 5 in the league against the run and top 1 in points against. But still, there's still some negative plays. There's still some growing pains. What is it about this run game that's prevented it from getting going?
That's a really loaded question. There's a couple things in this. I think their inability currently to figure out how they're going to split the running back reps, because you have two backs, in my opinion, that are very polar opposite of each other. Charbonnet is much more of a get your foot in the ground, get north-south. He can stretch things out a little bit, but he is a traditional one-cut kind of hit it and go. And the thing I'll give Charbonnet credit with, he has better field vision and understanding of where holes are going to appear. Ken Walker is your home run hit. He's your slasher. He can get his foot in the ground and get north-south, but he wants to try and find that perfect hole and hit it and go. And so when I look at this run game, that's just the running back portion of it. The offensive line is a whole nother monster. And two things have stood out to me the more that I've gone back and watched all 22, because that's what I've been doing during this bye week. Dan is watching a lot of the all 22. Sundell and Bradford are very much weak links, and Bradford is the weaker of the two links in this offense. And part of that is I think Sundell struggles not getting to the second level. He's phenomenal at it. He can get himself onto a backer. It's the initial first line where that first level he struggles with, when he's getting to have to deal with bigger, more athletic defensive tackles that play an outside 3-tech spot that he's required to get to. And so a prime example, I know some of you've probably seen it. Corbin Smith put up a really good clip on social media of a split zone run play. And what I mean by split zone is you have your tight end, say he's offset to the left side, and you're going to run zone left. The tight end will actually go back across formation and seal the backside end that's flowing in, because normally on a zone, you leave one man unblocked on the backside. In this case with split zone, your backside, your tight end goes backside and seals, and it starts to create the cutback lane. Sundell struggles to get across space on a zone play, and then Ken Walker, who is running the ball, thinks for some reason he can beat a already beaten Sundell's across face and get outside, and it just doesn't.
Yeah, I know the play you're talking about. And it's like when you watch it from the end zone angle, you're like, I thought this scheme was supposed to be built for guys to cut back against the grain, and then the hole is going to be there. And that one, it was clear as day.
And that's exactly the thing where I look at it and I go, this is where we're struggling. We're not reading holes properly. And then the other part with the Bradford part is Bradford's generally good on the first level, and he struggles getting to the second level. We've seen him fall down, look at a place, not be able to get to the second level. And I think it's because Bradford struggles in this scheme. He is a gap power guard. He is not a zone guard. And to me, it feels a little bit of trying to stick a very big round peg into a square hole. It's not going to work. There'll be moments where it'll look like it'll work and he'll be okay. But when it comes to this run game, what you if it was me, you got to make a decision on a running back. And who's going to carry 70% of that load. Then after that, you've got to find what zone run plays you can run well. So maybe the wide zone isn't it. Maybe you've got to now go in 2K. We're still going to be fundamentally a zone team, but we might have to go more into inside zone and get more going downhill than we are stretching out, because them, when they try to run outside, it hasn't worked. Whether it's a toss, whether it's a wide zone, they've just never been able to really get it. And part of it's because your running backs can't hit the cutback.
Maybe George Halani's the answer. Okay, next question from Josh DeHuman, regular contributor. Seattle runs 12 personnel a lot, top third of the league, I think, and the run seems to be more effective when we're in it. However, due to that, the offense sees more stacked boxes, which makes it harder to run. So this gets cut off, but I know where he finishes the question. The Seahawks indeed are facing stacked boxes at the highest rate in the league, the most stacked boxes of anyone in the league, which is not a terrible thing because it's allowing Sam Darnold to get it to do what he's doing without sending a lot of guys out into pass patterns. But at what point and how much, I guess the question is, how much better does the running game have to get before teams start to back off on that? Or maybe you flip the coin over. Why aren't teams dropping more guys into coverage to try and stop the passing game? Is it because they're even though that we might think the running game is not dangerous, that when defenses are preparing to see this offense, they're thinking as soon as we do that, they're going to start running the football? Is it the commitment to the run that they're worried about?
I think so. The reason why, how do you get teams out of these stack box looks? Part of it's boot action. So getting Sam Darnold out on the edge, and I don't mean, okay, he's faked a handoff, taken 3 steps and then reset up. I mean, actually making Sam a legitimate run threat on the edge. That causes the boxes to lighten a little bit because they cannot collapse them as much. You can't be shooting gaps as much because this quarterback comes out. And this is where, when you look at teams like the Rams, who've done it for years with McVay, that simple boot and that zip route underneath to the flat coming back across that mirrors the boot, that kills teams that want to load the box because you can't get your linebackers out there to it. And you're running a slot receiver on a seam and you're running a wide out on, a Z on an in. Now you've created levels to a passing concept off a very simple run action. The other thing with Seattle is, and I think Robbie Oots is a factor in this, you don't have an ability to get downhill and force teams to actually truly load the box. Yes, Seattle is seeing a stacked box, but they're not seeing a loaded box, which means they're still playing the pass and still getting to their spot drops. And so, I think part of it too is defenses go, okay, we're going to see if Sam Darnold can hit JSN all night. Can he make all the throws? Right now, Sam's making all the throws and it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
But let's take let's not give up the run. Let's take that away and let's see if Sam can continue to beat us with JSN. I think that's what most defensive coordinators are hedging on. And if you really look outside of the Saints game, most of our games have been quite close, less than 2 possession wins in a lot of cases. So if I'm a defensive coordinator or I'm a head coach and I'm going, hey, you know what? If we keep playing defense and take away their run, they can keep bashing their head into a wall. And maybe we get a bounce here or there. We'll flip a possession and we're in this game with Seattle because their defense will hang on, stop us, but we're able to take away enough of their offense that they're not functioning at full power.
When they do this self-scouting this week, I wonder what kind of conclusions are going to come about the interior of the offensive line. I can see there's a lot of questions related to that in the live comments, so we'll save that for then. But you touched on something, and maybe you could even see my reaction when you mentioned it. The bootleg stuff and getting Sam on the move and outside the pocket is something that we were promised, something that's a big part of this offense, something that they keep talking about whenever they're asked what went into the thought process of signing Sam Darnold after they moved on from Geno Smith. And it was driving me crazy on Monday night, especially late in the game when they're trying to burn some clock and salt this game away when they were deep in their own end before the fumble in the end zone. And they came out throwing it instead of trying to run it and not getting him outside the pocket. It was something I talked about on the reaction show. Why aren't they doing that more?
I think part of it, and again, this is where this all kind of ties in, I think part of it is because they can't run wide zone properly. And a lot of those boot actions come off of the wide zone fake. So if your wide zone's not working well enough, they're in their mind going, we can't boot off of it because no one's going to believe it's really going to be the wide zone. And that's why you're seeing where they are running well, which is generally between the tackles, and that's where they're getting most of their yards. That's why you're seeing a lot of the play action that is being successful, or what they're using, is coming off of what I call fast fakes. You're faking inside between the tackles. You're getting 3 steps off of that, turning around and looking for your target.
All right, a lot of questions now that are queued up are related to the trade deadline. Just a couple of weeks away, November 4th is the deadline indeed. David Furtado, if you were John Schneider, what position on offense would you be looking to add to by the trade deadline?
I have 2, and one's an obvious offensive line. The other one's receiver. They need someone to take the top off of the defense. And I know we can talk about JSN, and yes, JSN is a number 1 receiver, the best receiver right now in the NFL. But the guy for me is Raheed Shaheed that they need to go get from New Orleans. And the reason I say that is I know we went and got MVS. Shaheed's skill set, and I'll throw this back a few years. I'm going back to like 2010, I guess, would be the Super Bowl, Green Bay versus Pittsburgh. He has a very similar skill set to Mike Wallace. And what Mike Wallace presented to that Pittsburgh offense when they were starting to get Emmanuel Sanders and Antonio Brown and all those guys were starting to work in was Mike Wallace could take the top off of defense. The safeties had to play deep. They couldn't roll down into the box. And that's the other part of this too, a little bit with, the loaded box thing. If I can play a single high and shade them over to JSN, there is not another burner on this team that's going to scare me.
So teams aren't respecting Torrey Horton in that way, even though he's a 4-3 guy?
Not yet. They haven't. He's a rookie, and you're not seeing him used as much in that role. You put a guy that's got a proven track record at the NFL level out there, now teams will take notice of it.
And a guy that Clint Kubiak is obviously familiar with.
Exactly. So he would be one guy I'd be going after. And then the other one that I've heard through multiple sources of mine that I think could actually be a viable option, and I don't think it would cost the arm and leg to go get, would be JPJ out of Vegas.
Well, there was another report on Twitter today, and it, not from a media source, but someone connected, right, a content creator, that might be realistic. That the bridge there might be burned enough that I didn't. A couple of weeks ago when the idea first came up, I didn't take a lot of stock in it or put a lot of stock in it because I didn't think Pete was going to last the year. I don't think he's going to get to a year two. But he may have pissed off the GM enough too that they might just feel like he's not a fit there. So I think it'd be a mistake for the Raiders, but certainly if he's available, he's a guy that I loved in the draft. Then the question becomes, we're texting a little bit about it today. Where does he play? But I'm going to save some of those offensive line follow-up questions for later because I know we got a lot of it in the comments. Here's another trade question from Ian Victor. Would you, Bryce and Dan, be intrigued by these trade targets? These are a lot of names that have been tossed around quite a bit, although I haven't seen the secondary names. Denzel Ward, Minkah Fitzpatrick. I mean, my first impression of that is I don't think they need any help in the secondary. I think they're fine there. But Jermaine Johnson is one that it sounds like there is some indication the Jets may be looking to move some pieces that just don't fit with Aaron Glenn and his culture. And Jalen Phillips of the Dolphins, who I don't think they're going to, but they should hold a fire sale and tear that thing down and build assets and do a full rebuild in Miami. Not sure if they're going to, but certainly if they're thinking about offloading some pieces, Jalen Phillips is intriguing. Do they need help at edge with Derek Hall's back? I mean, who's he taking snaps from?
Derek Hall, if you were to bring an edge, you're probably taking away from Boye Mafe, to be brutally honest. I know some people may not like that.
Back. I mean, that's why I asked.
Yeah.
With like the way Nwosu's playing right now.
You're not taking Nwosu. Like right now, in my opinion, your starting two edges are Lawrence and Nwosu. And the fact that you have Mafe and Hall as your rotational makes it a lot easier to just say we're good for this season and we don't need to add. And the thing is Mike McDonald, whether you go back to his Baltimore days, never had a premium edge defender when he had his defenses there either. They had Kyle Van Noy and Jadeveon Clowney and, more of their pressure
Brent
and their
Urban
star.
And Malik Harrison.
Yeah.
Guys like
more of their guys were like in the middle. And that's where's most of Mike's stronger assets right now are in the middle with Murphy and with Williams. So Jermaine Johnson's interesting. Denzel Ward, I don't know if Cleveland will move him. Fitzpatrick, he's bounced around too much, and I don't know where you play him over Kobe, okay, but now you're having Julian Love have to relearn how to play with a safety partner. And Jalen Phillips, there's too much injury, history there for me where I really am not sold on that. But if you were to go in the secondary, Dan, there's one name for me. And one name that actually Corbin Smith brought up that was the same one when I had him on my show earlier this week, and that's Marlon Humphrey out of Baltimore.
Yeah, obviously played for Mike McDonald, physical corner, kind of undersized. Why would the Ravens think about moving him, though? They're struggling enough as it is on defense, even when they are healthy.
I think because the Ravens are hoping that Lamar comes back and it starts to right a ship, but I don't think it will. And I think they look at Humphrey as a guy that maybe they can get younger at the position. And this is what I'm saying. If you were to go after Marlon Humphrey and you're going to get him, then you're moving Reek Woolen to get him because they're going to want a corner coming back in the trade themselves. And that's where I would say that. So like, again, I don't think Reek's being moved. I don't think Marlon Humphrey is going to get traded, but that would be the guy that if I was to go get a corner, I'm going to get a guy that knows this system, that can pick it up and play fast and bring something to my defense.
Yeah, I think that's a key part of it if they're going to go out and get a corner, because as I said, I think the group's good to begin with. Mike McDonald's talked about how hard it is to learn that scheme, and he framed that in the way that he was describing how good Darian Kendrick looked in those first couple of games. He was pressed into action early because that's not the norm. I just don't think that's a big need right now. Next question. And this is something that I've been kind of pounding the table about, harping about all season long. Like, how can we include K9 or the running backs? I would say as a whole, receiving on the play action. Got a couple stats for you here. Last year in New Orleans, with the play caller being named Clint Kubiak, Alvin Kamara caught 68 balls throughout the season. So what does that math work out to? That's like 4 or 5 balls. That's 3 to 4 catches a game, right? Right now, the combination of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet together, based on what they've done so far, is on pace to catch 34 passes for the entire season, half of what Alvin Kamara caught by himself last year in New Orleans, and he missed some games due to injury. Why aren't they involving the running backs in the passing game?
O-line. They don't trust the O-line yet.
Even in 12 personnel. I mean, that's the part I don't get.
And I think part of that is they'd rather have Arroyo or Barner out in the route than they would have Kenneth Walker or Zach Charbonnet out in the route right now, is the way that they're looking at it. And
because the Saints had a rash of offensive line.
Oh, I know.
Year. Yeah, it's
but great. I think for them, they look at this tight end group and they look at them as more viable receiving options and threats than what the Saints did last year in their group. Like they had last year, obviously they had Juwan Johnson as their main tight end, and then it was Taysom Hill as the gadget. But you've got Arroyo, you've got Barner, you have viable, true receiving threats as tight ends, even though they don't seem to figure out how to use them yet. But I think what you're doing is you're keeping the running backs in as the protection, the check release guys, just in case. Like we saw it on the sack that Sam Darnold took.
That was a terrible chip by Zach.
Yeah. And that's kind of the thing, is it was a chip and then get out into the flat. And it was the same thing from Barner. Barner chipped and then went to the other hook flat on the other side. But that's what I can see as if I'm thinking that I don't trust, especially the interior of my offensive line and where the majority of these play fakes are happening, which is interior run style plays. That is why I'm keeping it in as an extra protector for us. So we have 6 at least in to protect if someone whiffs.
Well, and I know this is called Ask Coach Bryce, not Ask Dan, but I've got a couple of follow-ups to that as well. I think one is, and it kind of goes with this next question, why not more Bobo and Barner? First of all, the volume's just not there. Right. Like I think the run pass splits in New Orleans last year were more weighted towards they threw the ball more there than they are this year. I think that's a difference in what the head coach wants from Kubiak here. They're about 50-50 right now. They run it as much as any team in the league. And so that it's hard. It's easy for us to sit back here and say, gosh, I wish, they went to Arroyo a couple times early in that Texans game. Why did they get away from that? Well, the volume's not there. They're trying to run the football. But the other part is they haven't had to. Like, it's working, right? Like, you can't look at what they're doing on offense and say they're throwing it to JSN too much. Like, if there was ever a time he was going to be shut down, it was Monday. The Texans with D'Amico Ryans, one of the really good defensive minds in this league, and I know he doesn't call the plays on defense, but it's his defense. They had 2 weeks to prepare for this. They have Derek Stingley freaking Jr., one of the top 2 cover cornerbacks in this league, and yet JSN is still getting open and pretty much able to do whatever he wants. And so I think that kind of mitigates sometimes using some of these other weapons that we want to see get involved because they just don't need to.
Yeah, and Bobo's been really interesting this year because of how much I thought he was going to have a role in this offense. It's interesting to me the lack of the role in the actual regular season for him. Like, we've seen him come in a few times, and I don't know if it's like he made the one catch in the Arizona game, and then like I've seen him be involved in some of the blocking, but either JSN's blocking's improved so much that they don't see the need to take him off the field in certain situations now that maybe they thought they were going to have to in the preseason and in training camp. But it's really interesting. And I'll be honest, Barner, to me, like he's a weapon in his own right. He's a mismatch versus linebackers. I think it's more of a situation of Seattle hasn't figured out how to get the tight ends involved properly yet. And they get them involved in certain areas. Like they'll have sporadic moments. Like we look in the Texans game, Dan, like Arroyo in that second drive of the game, bang, bang. We see these plays to Arroyo. And then all of a sudden he's forgotten
this
about
is the breakout game. Here it comes.
Yep. And then all of a sudden they forget about him until I think it was 5 minutes left in the third quarter. And they threw him an out route. And yes, he had a fumble in the game. I get that. But having a fumble for one guy at one point when you're finally starting to use him should not deter you from going back to him, especially when that matchup was such a vital one.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess as a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, I want to throw in this bonus question for you because I feel like the last couple of games have been a good example of this. The Arizona game, though, would qualify as well, where the offense seems to be, I mean, it's been for the most part consistent from quarter to quarter, half to half, but it seems to be better early. Do you get the sense that Clint Kubiak is a little bit better at scripting his opening plays, however many that is? It varies it's usually around 15, right? That maybe he's a better scripter than he is an in-game decision maker at this point?
I would say yes. And the reason I say yes is when you're scripting plays, you can kind of get the looks you want in that first 15 in a lot of ways because you'll know if you present a certain look to the defense, this is what they're likely going to play. And you can take advantage of it. And then when you get through your first 15 and the defensive coordinator and their coaches are sitting up in the press box with the iPads, start to figure out how you're calling your game based off formation, down distance, hash mark, personnel groupings, then it starts to get taken away. And then you have to start adapting on the fly a little bit. And it doesn't mean like what your game plan is goes out the window, but hey, you've got a certain concept built in for 12 personnel. Well, the way that they've aligned doesn't allow that to work. You might now have to change that to 11 personnel. It might not be a play action pass. It might be a quick one-step split field read and get the ball out of your hand. Or, hey, you know what? When we come out in our 12 or our 21 personnel look with Robbie Oots and Ken Walker, they really load up the box. We can't run straight ahead. We've got to find a way to shift Robbie into a 2 tight end look and then use him as a passing threat now. So I agree. When the first 15 is great for Kubiak, and then you kind of see this roller coaster a little bit and he also, I think, in my opinion, Dan, at points this season, he has lacked patience with himself. And that's where you see the trick plays come in because I think for him, he looks at it and goes, when they hit a bit of a rut, he may not necessarily have the answer. So we'll throw Jalen Milroe in the game, or we'll throw a trick play to Cooper Kupp in the game to kind of spark something.
And we're all. What pissed me off is they were driving. It wasn't a rut.
But in his mind, he might look at it going, okay, where we're getting here in my head as an OC, I'm going, okay, we're getting into this range. I call it the green zone, not the red zone, because you're, just outside that 20-yard mark. You know what? Like every time we've got in there, they kind of had an answer for us. So I'm going to throw this and see if I can get like a splash play that's going to get us in there a little bit deeper down to maybe the 5-yard line. And then we can just go and smash the ball in with run plays instead of, no, it's okay. I'm good. Like we can throw the ball in these certain areas. Like we're still good if we're on the 15. Like that's probably part of it.
We got a question here from someone called Seahawks Forever. Not sure who that is. But they came in, checked in with a question. What the hell what's the deal on third downs? 3 third downs in the last 2 games. How they've won them both, is remarkable, but that's bad. It's really bad.
Part of that is they're getting into true pass situations. And what I mean by that is they're third and long. So play action's really out of the question. They're behind the sticks, and that's where you're seeing the struggles start to come in. When Seattle can stay ahead of the sticks and stay in third and manageable, where the running the ball and the play action is still a viable asset to you, they're fine. But what's happened in a lot of these games is they run, they get no yards, or they lose a couple. They throw, it's an incompletion, and now you're sitting in third and plus 10. Okay, well, you're in a true pass play now, and you're not going to run a screen. So now you're in this actual drop back situation. That's where our O-line's pass protection has actually gone down, is when they're in true drop back situations. They still are struggling with that immensely. That's where you're starting to see this third down struggle. And that's also correlated to we are struggling on second down. If you're struggling on third down, usually that means your second down, you did not get 5+ yards on it.
Well, and yet they're fifth in the league, averaging 27.6 points a game. So something's working. And can the third down stat, and you just touched on it a little bit, can it be overblown at times because maybe a team is just so good on first and second down that it doesn't matter?
Yeah. The thing is you want to look at your third, like for me, third downs are a crucial stat because usually if you're horrible in third down, your time of possession's gone down because there's no way to constantly be ahead of the chains. But if you're seeing, like you said, like 1 of 12, then you're messing up on second down and first down. And I think that's something that's kind of gone on with this offense lately, Dan, is the fact that we can't stay ahead of the change.
We are going to go to viewer questions. There's a ton of them. There's some activity over there. Let me do this real quick. Get rid of that. But first, we're going to do this, and then we'll come back with your questions on Ask Coach Bryce, right?
Sleeper is the #1 fantasy sports app. It pays to know sports. Pick more or less on top players. Your first pick is on us, so start winning now. Play in Texas, Georgia, Minnesota, and 27 more states. Pick anytime across all sports, pregame or live. Over 10 million players are already on Sleeper. Make your picks count. Score up to 1,000 times your cash. Join today. Get up to $100 credit using the code FOREVER. Call your shot on Sleeper. Download now.
All right, so we're going to get to your questions. I had to scroll all the way back to the beginning. I don't want to miss any good ones. I know this isn't a question, but this is we're suckers for those who want to suck up to us. So John, thank you. Really appreciate it. That's a pretty high bar. There's some good duos out there. He's literally saying that we're better than the Who's Your Daddy girls. So that's pretty impressive. Right?
That is impressive.
All right, let's scroll through this here. Let's see. We got to get through all the pleasantries here. Let's see. No, that one's not full. Here's one. It's not a question, but it's going to lead to one. So Johnny says, I don't want to trade Reek. He played solid last game. You'll have to teach a new DB the whole system before they can be effective. You talked about a guy like Humphrey. That's a different story. If you were able to make a move for a guy like that, he knows the scheme. He'd be able to play the week that you get him. But Reek came back and did, I think, play his best game on Monday. Made some plays down the field, was really in good coverage. And it just seemed like his body language was better. Like he was kind of feeling it a little bit again, too. Now you get Devin Witherspoon back. You got Emanwari healthy, kicking ass in the slot. Just talked to Griffin Sturgeon about that tonight. We're going to do a show that'll be posted tomorrow. His thoughts on Emanwari. Everyone's back now. Like, you're a team that wants to win this division and go deep in the playoffs. You don't go trading your best cover corner, do you?
Not for just any reason to trade him. Like I said, like if I'm trading Reek Woolen, it is to get Marlon Humphrey in, who knows this system and can play at a high level in this system and is still a good player. I think Reek, that was his best game. I think that might have been Reek's best game, honestly, Dan, since we're talking his early second year. And the reason I say that is you look at the deep ball. Yes, it was underthrown, but he didn't panic. He didn't go grabbing. He didn't freak out like he's done in the past and get all worried. And that's the one thing Mike Stevens said is Reek has to learn to trust his technique and not panic.
Yeah.
He comes up and makes that great stick on that one out route where he nails the running back, I think it was, or the slot receiver who's running an arrow route to the flat, nails him. Like he started to play with a little bit of physical violence again, which was good to see. That was probably the most confident we've seen Reek in a while. And I think for Reek, the biggest issue he's got is, and I go back to look at this guy's trajectory. So he's in college. He's a receiver. He's not at some big Power 5 school where he's going to get elite, probably level coaching to get him ready for the NFL, and he makes a position switch. Like the difference for Richard Sherman making that switch is Richard Sherman's playing at Stanford for Jim Harbaugh and a very good coaching staff that is going to be able to get him
at the time a very good conference. Yeah,
exactly. And so that compared to where Reek comes out of UDS, what is it? I can't even remember what school he's
San Antonio. Yeah.
Thank you. And he's now being asked to switch positions in college. Okay, he's good enough to cover. He's athletic enough. He's a physical freak to be able to channel that challenge. Then he gets to the NFL. And his rookie year, he doesn't get tested as much because he makes some really good plays and teams kind of get a little afraid of him. Problem is when you get to the NFL level and every time you move up in football, whether it's high school to college, college to the pros, the physical aspect gets that much smaller and the mental aspect gets that much bigger. And if you can't adjust to how fast you have to make decisions mentally and be correct in your technique, you will struggle. And I think for Reek, what you saw is he had the injury. Pete Carroll's his coach. He's comfortable in Pete Carroll's defensive philosophy and how their feet move and their whole kick step technique and everything. To then Mike McDonald coming in, who's more detail-oriented, who's more technical, I think, in some aspects of coaching his defense. And the way that things are asked of the corners is completely different than Pete. And I think you get a player that's stuck in between, still struggling to figure it out as he's still learning how to be a corner in general. Like, and I get it's 4 years now, but we're still talking. That's a massive leap from college to the pros. Now I think Reek might have had a kind of glimpse of football mortality in some respects with his injury. Like, okay, holy, like if I don't really get this together, like I could not make some serious money this offseason and be bouncing around the league as a journeyman corner, and came out and played his best game.
Yeah. I think the other thing for people to consider too, that still think trading for a corner makes sense, is Darian Kendrick didn't play a snap on Monday, and that's without Devin Witherspoon being active. So, that just shows you the depth there and how they plan to use those guys. And now Witherspoon comes back on Sunday. If he stays healthy, like I think they're good. I mean, now if you have an opportunity to get a guy that you love that's available, that's under contract beyond this year, maybe you could convince me that that's a move worth making, because right now, as we sit here today, Devin Witherspoon's the only corner on this roster outside of Nehemiah Pritchett who's under contract for 2026. So that'll be something that we'll have to address in the offseason for sure. Hey, Amy Holmes is here. There's a lot of talk about the weather in the comments for some reason. So, I noticed that while I was down in the corner. John McGrath asking about Robbie Oots. We're not sure if he's going to come back. McDonald said he might be ready to practice after the bye week. With McDonald's track record talking about when guys are going to be back, then I'll just expect that maybe he's back by the Rams game week 11. Like, to me, that would be sort of the target date. We've seen, when he first went out, they didn't use the fullback at all. That was kind of how they responded to that. We didn't see a lot of Brady Russell. That seems to have picked up the last couple of weeks, and he had some really nice blocks on Monday night. What kind of impact do you think his return could make?
Oh, it can be huge, because you can get back into your eye. You can get back into your 21 personnel. You can get, even the 12 personnel changes, because you don't necessarily have to put Arroyo out there. You can move Robbie Oots into those roles. And the other thing I'll say about Robbie Oots compared to Brady Russell, and I think Brady Russell is a fantastic special teams player and depth piece. Robbie Oots sets a tone. And what I mean by that is when Robbie Oots goes through a hole and there is a linebacker on the other side, that linebacker truly is making a business decision. If I'm going to step in that hole and take on a guy that's running at me that's 270 pounds. Brady Russell is not that size. Brady Russell can make some good blocks, but Brady Russell to me is where fullbacks are kind of trending out of being, which is, when I say that, is guys that you kind of had as an extra tight end or special teams guy that you could put in there, couldn't really carry the ball, but he could block well enough that you could get into a couple of different looks with I formation or a shifting tight end. I think, and this is just my opinion, the NFL is going to get the fullback position back where it is an actual predominant piece of an offense again, because of what it affords you versus the too high shell. And it is going to take NFL defenses and colleges now to develop a little bit bigger linebackers, a little bit stouter edge players to handle this change the NFL is going to go to, which is back to the run game. Teams that are playing under center more than they are playing in shotgun this year are some of the more successful offenses in the NFL. Part of that reason is running downhill and the incorporation of a fullback into their scheme. Robbie Oots, that's the reason they went out and got Robbie Oots and brought him into the fold, is his presence in there. And the fact that you can leak him out into the flat and now he's a viable receiving threat out there because of his tight end background is a huge advantage to any play caller. I love having a fullback in my scheme. I love having tight ends in my scheme because if they are more athletic than the linebackers they are facing, they create a massive mismatch, whether it's in the run game or in the pass game.
Here's a cool question from Kickup. And by the way, it looks like that thing is happening again where people's usernames are coming up instead of their actual nicknames that they determined for themselves. So sorry about that, guys. But we know who Kickup is. We coming into the season, we thought that Kobe Bryant was going to be the long-term answer at free safety. They tried to get him to agree to an extension before the season started. He rejected it. He's played well this year, but if they can't come to an agreement or he wants to test free agency because he thinks there's a payday out there for him, Ty Okada took a beating from fans his first game or two where he was playing limited snaps because all it takes is one bad rep and fans turn on you. But he's gotten some praise the last couple of weeks from some really smart analysts, not the least of which is our friend Corbin Smith, who has been really defending him the last couple of weeks as he's playing well. He made a pass deflection in the red zone on Monday night that saved a touchdown, played some of his best football. And then you name dropped him just a little bit ago as a guy that's playing well. How do you think he's played himself into the conversation? Should Kobe Bryant walk?
Oh, I think he's definitely played himself into the conversation, Dan. And I think he's on a similar trajectory that Kobe was last year. And the reason I say that is I think Ty Okada is a better athlete than Kobe Bryant. And Ty Okada, I think, gives you again, Nick Imanwari and Julian Love are locked in as your two safeties. I think Kobe, the fact that he hasn't signed yet, and we're talking about a guy that really has only played at this point now one true full season for the Seattle Seahawks, if you include the half of last year that he took over as the starter for Rayshon Jenkins, and now to this bye week, he's played one full season because his first year, he was a nickel. It was on and off the field in that nickel situation. He wasn't always the starting nickel for Pete Carroll. Then the second year, he was injured. He had the toe injury. He couldn't shake it. Then they moved him around. They couldn't find a way to get him on the field because he tried to move into safety. Then finally, they moved him to safety last year. He still didn't start the season. Rayshon did, and he finally took over the job. There's things that Kobe Bryant does do well, but the more that I've watched Ty Okada play, the more comfortable he has gotten. I think he's a better tackler in the box and a more aggressive tackler in the box. I think he can cover the deep part of the field better than Kobe can, just based off his athleticism. Kobe's a bigger guy. He's 6'1", I think, just close to 200. Ty Okada's 5'11", I think 195. So there's a bit of a size difference there. But the one thing when you listen to Mike McDonald talk about Ty Okada is how smart he is, how he gets the defense, knows where to be. And we saw some of his athleticism in that interception he had in the Green Bay game and that pass deflection he had on Monday night. Like, he is a good safety. And I think, personally, my bold take is Kobe Bryant won't be a Seahawk next year because he'll go get paid more money somewhere else. And I think your four safeties next year, maybe they have to add a draft pick to challenge, will be Julian Love, Ty Okada, DeAnthony Bell, and Nick Imanwari.
Interesting. All right, let's talk offensive line because it's a big topic, and everybody's looking for upgrades. And here's what I've been saying about that, and I've been consistent in saying this. I would hesitate to make any changes there unless it is a significant upgrade. Like maybe even a guy that we don't even think might be available, a guy that's not being talked about. Maybe somebody that the Seahawks loved through the draft process. Maybe it is a guy like JPJ because he's still so young, depending on their draft evaluation of him. Guys like that don't become available. He shouldn't be available. He's a good player. The Raiders would be stupid for trading him. But if it's really true that they're considering moving on from him and they're looking at a rebuild and want to amass some picks, then maybe that's the exception to the rule. But so much of what the Seahawks have struggled with over the last 10 years up front has been because of lack of continuity. It's lack of talent and the right scheme and all of that too, but they just haven't ever settled on a group. Right now they're on pace to give up 27 sacks. And we can sit here and we can talk about the running game, and I know there's some comments off here to the side that the holes just aren't there. Well, it's effective enough that this offense is fifth in the league in scoring, and it does seem to be improving kind of tangentially as we move forward, word of the day. But I don't want to mess with that continuity unless it's a clear upgrade. And so we get this question here. Christian Haynes' injury situation has been a little bit of a mystery. Obviously, that pec injury is more severe than we thought it was. We kind of thought at the time they put him on the injured reserve list, it was just sort of an excuse to get him to calm down and just sort of take the pressure off him a little bit. It sounds like he might have a chance to return to practice after the bye. Do you think they'll let him compete for that spot? And do you still believe, based on what you saw during the draft process last year, that he might be a better fit for this scheme than Bradford?
Oh, the thing for me that worries me with Haynes is, again, kind of what I was talking about with Sundell, just lack of anchor, like just lack of lower body ability to move somebody. Now, the thing I'll say,
with one of those guys, but having two of them side by
two is
side
tough.
Be problematic.
The thing with, I don't know how much longer you can persist with Bradford, though, because he is getting worse and worse. And if you watch, I know there's the videos out there, and I'm not talking about the TikTok videos showing every single bad rep. But if you go and watch from game 1 to now, Bradford is slowly getting more and more inconsistent in his play. And that's what's concerning me. And I don't think they're ready to turn to Bryce Cable, though even I've heard that they really like him and they think he could be a potential conversation piece next year for a starting guard spot. I don't think they're going to turn to him. So I think there's two options that Seattle goes through. I think they either look at Haynes, and they're probably going to start looking at it this week, to be honest with you, on if he's going to come off, is he viably going to be able to push Anthony Bradford, or are you going out and making a trade for a guy that can come in and actually be a viable other option? Because the other name for me that I think Seattle should take and probably call is Wyatt Teller at Cleveland. And I know everyone's got the Chenna thing. I get that. I understand that. But I'm pretty sure if you said to Chenna, hey, we're bringing in Wyatt Teller, it's going to help our run game, it's going to help us make a deep playoff run because we'll have a more sustainable offensive line. I think Chenna can kind of get over that whole thing, and everything, that people have told me about, Wyatt Teller that he's a good locker room guy. I think you can find a way to get around it because other players have done other shit in the league and injured other players and ended up playing together at some point in their careers. I just think you can't keep going forward because Bradford could eventually become the linchpin, Dan, that throws your season off the balance, whether it's he gives up a massive pressure in a playoff game that causes a forced sack and a fumble and it loses us the game, or you can't open a hole on a 3rd and 4th and short and we can't get the first down. Like, something is going to happen where Bradford may cost us the game.
And that Kevin Stefanski offense, that's West Coast based. That's zone running scheme, right? Similar.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Here's another one from John that's interesting. We've been told, Mike McDonald has told us himself, that if anything were to happen to Zabel or McDonald or Bradford, the first move would be Olu comes back in at center, Sundell moves over to right guard. So that would be plan A as opposed to bringing in Bryce Cable. Do you think if they don't or can't make a move for anybody at the deadline and they, after self-scouting, agree with your assessment that they need to do better there at the right guard spot, do they give this a shot?
Ooh, I don't know if they'll go to Cable but I think they give Olu a shot. I think they do. I think there's no reason not to. And I've said this before that, like, if Sundell cannot, if he's struggling in certain aspects of first level run blocking, you need to consider putting Olu in there and seeing what Olu can do. And yeah, you may be sacrificing something at the second level, but my other point right now about that is you are struggling to hit cutbacks, which is usually where that second level blocking is ideal. And if you can't even hit the cutback because your first line isn't, your first level isn't getting blocked up properly, it doesn't really matter that your guy can get to the second level if your running back didn't tackle the line of scrimmage as is. Yeah.
Let's see. Glad we addressed that because we had quite a few people suggesting it themselves. Let's see. There was a question in here. Now I can't find it, from somebody in regards to the trick play, asking you.
Curtis Allen did it.
Yeah. It was our buddy Curtis Allen. I wanted to go to it and then I couldn't. Where is it? I'm going to find it because, love Curtis and I love that he took the time to be here. And now I don't see it. But he was basically asking, like, as a quarterback coach, as an offensive coordinator, when you're thinking about running a trick play like that, like, it's one thing to be able to throw the football, right? Cooper Kupp, for them to even consider calling a play like that, he must be able to throw the football adequately but it's the instincts that go with it. And when I watched the replay of that play, it just looked like a play that had no chance, wasn't there, that he should have tucked and ran and gave up on it. But the instincts aren't there. And he's been waiting all week. Who knows how long this play's been on the call sheet, and he's excited for it. And the adrenaline's pumping. And so you get short-circuited and you make the wrong decision because you're just not used to seeing it play in and play out. It doesn't come naturally to you. How much of that do you have to take into account before you think about calling one of these plays?
You do have to take that into account. You have to, because the thing with trick plays, and this is the one thing I think people forget, is they may rep them, but it is usually something that is so out of the ordinary for their normal play, their normal mental thought process in a play, that guys stress about them. Like Cooper Kupp may have been like, yeah, I can throw it. Yeah, okay. It's cool in practice to do it, but then all of a sudden it gets a little bit more ramped up during the game. And you see JSN wide open. It's like, holy, this actually worked. And you sail it because you're just not accustomed to having that be something that's a part of your play, body language and body makeup at that point, because you're not used to throwing the ball. And so when I devise trick plays, I will run them and run them and run them. And I will put more and more pressure on the player during the practice of it going completely wrong. The ball gets dropped on the ground or any of the things to stress them out. So when it does actually become an opportunity for them to call that, I will, and this is the other thing that always goes wrong with these, Dan. Usually most coaches will take a timeout and they'll go, timeout. Okay, we're going to get everyone. Okay, we're going to run this. And they'll stand in the huddle and they'll look at the player and they'll be like, we're going to run whatever the trick play is. I don't know, the flea flicker. And they'll say to that player that's got the crucial point in it, you need to make sure you get that handoff and turn around, and that pitch is right back to the quarterback. Well, that player's stressing out about it. They're like, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was just going to go do it. And so for me, I'll just nonchalantly call the trick play in. No timeout, no nothing, and just watch them go do it. And that's to try and eliminate the overthinking part of that.
Apparently, we're boring the pants off of the people in the comments because they're talking about how hard it's raining in Seattle.
It was raining bad up here too. It's not fun.
Let's see what else I can find here. It's like people have stopped asking questions and they're just going off on a. We have had a couple of questions about Riley Mills, and I addressed this on my show yesterday, or I think on the live last night, that we did hear something a little bit more definitive from Mike McDonald than we have up until this point, that they think he might be ready to practice within 3 or 4 weeks after the bye. I think that was what he said.
From what I heard, it was 4 to 6 weeks to see what they were going to do is what I thought it was. And so,
which means now we're week 16, 17. Like, why would you activate a guy and get a game or two out of him and blow his rookie contract? Because just so everyone knows, if you do not play your rookie year because of injury, if you're not active your entire rookie year, PUP list, injury reserve, non-football injury, this happened with Darrell Taylor, right? He was available to be active. He had gone through his practice window at the end of the season, his rookie year, and they never activated him for game day. And so his rookie contract tolls forward. You basically get 4 new years out of it. Why would you burn a redshirt year essentially to play a guy for 2 or 3 games?
Unless he's going to come in and make an immediate impact, that's the only way I could see it doing. Or you lose someone within your defensive rotation on that D line.
That's the only thing I think that would make sense. If you get really rabid, if Jaron Reed and God forbid Leonard Williams go down, or some combination of any of the guys in that rotation that you're counting on the interior, then you may have no choice. But if given the choice, it just doesn't make sense to me. I'd rather bring him back next year 100% healthy.
Exactly. I think that's what they're doing. I think that's what they're doing, Dan. I don't expect Riley Mills to play this year, barring somebody of significance getting hurt on the defensive line. I don't foresee them bringing Riley Mills in unless they're 100% certain he's healthy.
Mookie Alexander checking in. Good to see you. Part of the Seahawks Syndicate, which, by the way, we're coming up on our monthly show next Wednesday. Check for that with Bryce and Mookie and I and Brandon Kane from the Hawks Nest. Looking forward to that, recapping the first half of the season. Mookie says Seahawks are terrible at running outside the tackles, but at least middling inside the tackles. You may have touched on this a little bit, but what do you think is the root cause?
Struggling to get your angles. So what I think the issue is when they play certain techniques, 3 techs that are athletic and have size, Sundell is struggling to get across space whichever way they're running, and it bleeds. And so the one thing with the center position in the zone scheme is they are truly like the linchpin in that bridge between the right side and the left side. So whichever way you run, if your center cannot get his block correctly, that back half of it will bleed and that front half will bleed. And it creates so many more issues to try and get to the edge because your tackle can get, like, say if they're running outside zone left and Charles Cross is able to get himself and drive that, edge player outside, and Zabel's able to wash his guy and work to the backer. And then Sundell's got to deal with that 3 or that 1 tack. And that guy gets across his face. Well, now it stops the running back, or the running back bounces farther than he's supposed to on his target of the edge. And now you get a safety or a linebacker that scrapes over the top and seals it in.
Yeah. This is not a question, it's a comment, but it's something that I was thinking of earlier in the show. And so just thought I'd throw it out there. So far, McDonald seems to be establishing a regime that values long-term player health over rapid recovery from injuries. And I like that. Although I'm still a little annoyed that they brought Witherspoon and Love back for the Arizona game when clearly they weren't 100%. But they haven't lost since. So, the Tampa Bay game, I guess, came after that. But it reminds me of a thought I had earlier when we were talking about lack of bootleg and some of the offensive play calling and not using Arroyo and Horton as much, and tying it into this idea that I do believe that Devin Witherspoon and Julian Love could have played on Monday night. The old cliche that if it was a playoff game or if it was for seeding, they would have played. Like, Devin Witherspoon practiced in full the last 2 days of the week, but that they didn't because they were confident enough they could beat the Texans with what they had. And they were looking not at Sunday night against Washington, not at week 10 against Arizona. They were looking at week 11 against the Rams and how important that game is looming, and how they just haven't been able to stop that McVay passing game and offense the last several years. And they feel like they have a chance to now with all their players healthy. I think they're playing the long game there. Could they be doing it offensively in some ways as well? Parts of the playbook that, hey, we're rolling, we're playing well enough on offense that we don't have to get to this part of our playbook. We're going to hold that back. Or is that a ridiculous notion in the NFL?
I don't know if it's a ridiculous notion. I think it's you call what you know is going to work and win you football games at the NFL level. You can do a bit of gamesmanship that way, but usually what you see teams do is they'll have something that works and they know that it's going to work and they'll just dress it up in a different way. And so that's what you'll see with teams is they'll have a certain recipe. We'll put it in a food relative thing. You'll have a recipe and it really works, but then you know that, hey, you go to your buddy's house to cook that same recipe for game day, but you forgot one of the essential ingredients to it, but you know you have another ingredients that can dress it up the same way. And it's going to taste the same way. It may look the same way, but then it gives you a little bit more kick in a different direction because of the flavor change. Similar to what offenses do in the sense that, they may run a really good mesh concept out of a certain formation, and you know that you're going to be able to take advantage of that versus the Rams. But the Rams are going to be keying on how you're running it and what formation you're running it on. So how do we dress this up a little bit differently? Maybe instead of having Cooper Kupp run the climb over route, maybe he runs a climb and then breaks it into a vertical route, and we run somebody else on an under climb instead. And it's the same kind of principles in the read and everything for Darnold, but we're just changing it enough that it looks different.
Here's one from Setting the Edge. Hey, Bryce, as teams seem to be attempting to pressure Darnold on 1st and long, 2nd and long and medium, do you see them starting to have run success with power and draws last week? We haven't seen a lot of draw plays from them.
I could see power becoming a thing when Robbie Oots comes back and running like a power zone concept. Draws are a tricky thing because you really have to make sure you're getting the right blocks and you're also setting yourself up with the right kind of look, personnel wise, formationally, that's going to give you the, hey, they're really going to throw here and then run the draw. The problem is you get into situations where teams will run a draw and it'll look like any normal play and the team will play the run first before they play the pass. So you really have to sell that. And that means you're going to have to come out more a few times in true pass looks, maybe run some more true pass set style plays on first down to get teams to bite on it so you can run the draw.
I've referenced this a couple of times. Soon, with the question for Coach Bryce, is this the Weather Channel? There's a lot going on over here. Let's see what we got here. I don't want to leave anybody out if we can. All right. You fired some people up with your Okada take.
Oh boy.
You know how it is. Sometimes once people make a decision about a player, it's very hard to change their mind, good or bad, right? And so I get that.
Well, I love Kobe Bryant. Like, he's been one of my guys from the beginning.
But you have to think ahead. He may, he turned down their contract extension offer. He may want to test free agency, and they might let him. From Skyhawk, why not trade for Olave instead of Shaheed? I've got my reasons, but why do you like Shaheed better? They're both in the expiring years of their contracts.
I don't need a clone. I don't want a clone. Like, that's my thing. Too much like JSN. JSN's a better version of Olave as it is. Bringing him in isn't going to, I don't think, like, it'll bring something to the offense, but when you bring in a guy that has a certain skill set that you do not currently possess, and that's what Shaheed does. Shaheed's over-the-top deep threat is something you do not currently possess in this offense.
Yeah.
Horton might be that guy next year, but he's not this year, and that's why, for me, I don't see the appeal of the Olave situation. Like, unless you're going, okay, cool, we're going to bring Olave in and we're going to trade Cooper Kupp out of town, which I don't see them doing. That's where you'd make that kind of determination. No, they're not. They're going to try and get Kupp more involved, and they're going to try, if they're going to add anybody, it's going to be someone that brings something they don't have.
Yeah. I think that's it. Here's a comment, not a question, from Rockman Drums. Heck yeah, you guys all kill the Hawks coverage. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Here's another comment, not a question. Night looked good for a while too. Talked to Griffin about this earlier today. That show will be out tomorrow. But what's your take on Tyrese Knight's regression in year 2 and Drake Thomas now firmly taking over for him at weak side linebacker?
I've said for a while, I think it's a playbook issue or understanding and just not being able to play fast. And I think there's things that Mike McDonald wants his linebackers to be able to do that Tyrese could do last year in the basic version of Mike McDonald's defense. But as this defense has evolved and gotten more into the playbook, I think Knight struggles with. And he may turn around and be able to figure it out over the offseason and, become a viable candidate to start again next year. But I think there's ways that Drake Thomas right now just plays faster than Knight does.
Yeah, and I still maintain that I think there's something physically not right with him. He just didn't look as explosive as he did as a rookie. We never have gotten an explanation for what the medical issue was on top of the knee that held him out for 3 weeks in training camp. I think there was something there that might be lingering, but it's clearly zapped him of his mojo. But like you said, there's no reason to give up on him. He's at worst, I think his floor as a 4th-round draft pick, and this is good value, is as a guy that can play Mike and Will. And even if he's not your starter, there's a lot of value in that moving forward. That's what Drake Thomas has been the last 2 years. Now he's getting his opportunity, and he's making plays. He's playing great. He's filling up the stat sheet the last 2 weeks. He's sacking the quarterback. He's covering. He's getting pass breakups. He's kind of been everywhere. Now this is interesting from Mookie, always thinking next level. It's what he does. That's why field goals is so good. Here's food for thought. If you trade for a wide receiver, does Bobo get cut or do you keep 6 receivers? You also have to consider how healthy Young is and whether his injury is minor or IR worthy. Sounds like that Young injury might be legit, as Pete Carroll used to say. So maybe that kind of takes care of itself. But how would you see that receiver room kind of shaking out?
I think if they make a trade, I think there's a good chance, like from what they'd said about Young, what Young looked like he did in the game, I think he probably strained or did something pretty significant to that quad. I think they may throw him on IR because you can bring as many guys back now once you put them on IR. There's no, things against it. And then make that decision down the line. I could see Bobo getting cut because Bobo right now isn't playing a lot of snaps, and they're using their 2 tight end sets. They're doing a lot of those things. So if he's not going to, jump Horton or Cup or JSN, obviously, then, and you bring in Shaheed, say, for example, and he's now going to be your deep threat and your burner, then maybe Horton gets bumped down. Shaheed's now your 3rd. Bobo's now bumped down to your 5th as is. Like, it's a chain reaction. I don't know. It'll all depend on what they do with Young, I think.
Question from Ian, who jumped in late, says, I see the Hawks making 2 trades on the offensive side of the ball. Meanwhile, is Darnold one reading JSN most of the time? Because I'm seeing it a lot lately.
Yes and no. I think on some plays, yes, he is one reading JSN. I think on other plays, JSN's just getting open the fastest in the progression. And depending on the style, so you got to understand when they design plays, there's usually 2 types of reads. There's half field and there's full field. And so full field's usually when you get crossing routes built in that'll take your eyes from left to right, just naturally via the progression. Split field reads are you walk up pre-snap, you determine a side of the field you're going to attack, and you just know where your check down is off of that. And so I think on what you're seeing, where you're seeing him one read JSN, there might be an indicator for Sam Darnold that, hey, pre-snap, this is the side I'm attacking. It just happens to be JSN's side.
I got a question for you. It's not a football question. It's a general sports question. And there's some intention behind it. When your favorite team gets knocked out of the playoffs by another team, do you want to see that team fail, or do you want that team to go on and win to validate that you lost to the better team?
Okay,
so asking, right?
This is a really interesting one for me. It depends on what that team that knocked my team out's relation is. So if we're talking like the Seahawks lose to a division rival, there is no way on this earth I am cheering for the 49ers or for the Rams or the Cardinals to go and win. No, not happening. If they were to lose like to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yeah, I probably would say like, yeah, I'd like to see Tampa go on and be successful. But if there's any sort of bad blood between me and the other team, that there is not a chance I want to see them have any sort of happiness.
I think that's a great answer. I think if the Mariners have been knocked out by the Houston Astros like they were in the past, I want nothing but pain for the Astros moving forward. But in this case, I said right after Game 7, I said, that sucks. That hurts. We should be in the World Series, but we're not. Go Blue Jays. Go beat the Dodgers. Beat the evil empire. It's 11-2 in the 6th inning. Toronto right now, they're absolutely crushing the Dodgers in Game 1. So, yeah, I mean, what's going to make your team look better? The Mariners took them 7 games despite, having a bottom third of the order that couldn't get on base. I want the Blue Jays to go kill the Dodgers so that we can say we lost the best team in baseball, at least, right?
I don't know. I struggle with the Blue Jays because I just don't like Toronto sports teams in general. So for me, it's kind of at this point a little indifferent. So
don't get your Canadian citizenship revoked.
Oh, I am so okay. The amount of obnoxious Blue Jays fans, it's like Dallas Cowboy fans, to be brutally honest with you, Dan. Same when you talk about hockey and the Maple Leafs up here.
Wow, Mookie says they pulled Snell with the bases loaded and nobody out, and the 2 relievers came in and gave up 9 runs. Here's a draft question, which gives me a great way to do some selfless self-promotion. Had Justin Mello of the Draft Network, their lead writer, on with me earlier today. We did a Seahawks 3-round mock draft. Even talked about some of the other guys in consideration at each of those picks. It was all based on their big board and their scouting reports. Check that episode out if you haven't already. He says, little too early to talk about this, but are there any offensive linemen in draft in the first round next year? Are you guys going to push for that? First part of that question, I know you're probably like me, haven't exactly got into deep diving on the class yet, but just the general concept, because I hear this a lot. Even heard it earlier today in the comments from people that have watched the mock draft episode. Why aren't we drafting a guard again in the first round? Why aren't we drafting a guard again in the first round? And to which, usually I wait until February or March to talk about my draft philosophy, but it's just not that easy, right? Like, we don't know what the guard class looks like. We don't know what the group of players, the strength of the first round is going to be in the mid to late 20s, which is where we expect to draft. It's not always about that, right?
Completely. And there's a bunch of factors you got to look at. What's the free agency class going to look like this year as, the offensive line goes? And so,
because they may want to add a veteran. It's such a young group. If they feel like they need to get better at that spot, they might want to bring in some experience.
100%. And I think for them, with the way this team is currently constructed, I'm going to say these are the three groups I think that maybe could be higher than O-line, and O-line will fit in there somewhere, Dan. But these are the four main position groups I think Seattle is going to be targeting in this draft. Not in any particular order. Running back. I think they're going to take a running back in the top 3 rounds. I think it's going to be an O-line for sure. They'll probably take another one just to add to that group. But I don't know if it'll be a first round pick guy.
Yeah.
The other thing is corner. I think they're going to be adding a corner. And I think the other thing will be the edge. They're going to add another edge player because they will be losing Boye Mafe in the offseason, I bet.
Man, look at this. Just to give you a little teaser, this is what Justin came up with on my other episode. You nailed it. He has a really dynamic edge, Cassius Howell at Texas A&M in the first round, Jair Hill, tall, long corner out of Michigan, and then Le'Veon Moss, running back out of Texas A&M. There were some comments in earlier on in regards to whether running back could be a need, and I know. Again, fans fall in love with guys and the idea of guys. And we saw some comments earlier that, hey, they've got Helani, McIntosh is going to be coming back off injury. We like what we saw from Jacardier, right? And maybe that is the answer. But I don't think in it with a team that wants to run the football, desperately wants to be great at running the football, just getting by with 4 yards per carry and having it be functional like it was on Monday night isn't what Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak want. And so if they determine that none of the guys in their running back room has a chance to be great, then absolutely they're going to be looking for a guy at some point in the draft that they think brings them value.
There's one name that if they pick, I will be buying the jersey of. And that is Jonah Coleman.
I was going to say, you're going to go with the Husky kid?
I've got to go.
Justin mentioned him today, said he was under consideration there as well. Yeah.
He is 100%, I think, a guy that for this scheme. Again, Jed Fish runs a bit of a zone scheme there, knows it from McVay and stuff, but he can catch out of the backfield. He runs with such an attitude, and he is so patient and then explosive. He is the guy, like, if Seattle picked up Jonah Coleman in this draft and added it to Charbonnet in this room, I'd be head over heels. Hey, that's
Amy. What Amy. Let's end on that, man. What do you got coming up on the Seahawks Eye? What are you working on?
So over on the Hawks side, we've got Corbin Smith episode coming out. Did a bit of a film breakdown, talked to Corbin about, trade possibilities, what he felt this first half of this season's been like so far. We'll have Greg Bell on next week. Really looking forward to that interview with Greg and talking to him and getting his vibe on this team. Obviously, we got Seahawks Syndicate coming out on the Wednesday night, so that'll be some fun. And then a couple other irons in the oven in that regard, with maybe Coach Derek coming back from All 22 to do a breakdown show there as well. So
nice.
That's kind of what we got going on.
And as I said, if you haven't checked out the 3-round mock draft with Justin Mello, do that. And then Griffin Sturgeon, that conversation mostly centered around how he feels about Nick Emenwari through his first 4 games. That'll be out tomorrow. We talk about some other things on defense as well. Jeff Simmons is going to be joining me next Tuesday. And then Stacy Rost from 710 Seattle, half of the Bump and Stacy show there, is going to be joining me next week as well. Get her thoughts on the second half of the season, and then we're ready. And then we're going to go Commanders Sunday Night Football from there. I'm still thinking about going to the game. It's only a 5.5-hour drive from here. I'm keeping my eye on the Game Time app. Let me just say that the prices are coming down little by little. Yeah, might be weather related, but hopefully the weather will be better than it is in the Pacific Northwest. Apparently, sounds like it's pretty rough tonight. So to all of you, I hope you get through it. It's 55 degrees and beautiful and clear outside here, not to rub it in, but I miss home. Yeah, I miss home, man. That was the hardest part about watching those Mariner games, is like not being there, because I would have mortgaged a body part or something to be in that ballpark. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Always good to see you. Always good to see all of you here. Thanks for being here. And if you want to scan that QR code, the full launch is next week. You'll be able to see some of the changes over at Patreon. Everything going to be under one umbrella now. It's called Northwest Forever over there on Patreon. All of my Seahawks Forever content, Mariners Forever, my Substack, everything, all one-stop shopping. So check that out if you would. Bryce, we'll see you on Wednesday for the Seahawks Syndicate. Until then,
sounds good.
Forever and always, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.